Trump, tariffs, and Christmas goodies dominate Parliament Hill at midweek. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
The answers you need
from the people in the know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Some MPs were working overtime. The threat of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump imposing an across-the-board 25% tariff on all Canadian exports to the United States prompted an emergency debate on the floor of the House of Commons, where little work has been getting done for the better part of the last 2 months. The Conservative leader, the leader of the official opposition, Pierre Poilievre, was there and said Donald Trump sees Canada as weak, led by a weak leader.
We enter this crisis in a state of weakness. We have a weakened economy, a weakened military, and most of all, a weakened prime minister. Weakened, and that weakness, I think, may have been one of the reasons why President Trump believed that he could go ahead and make these threats and trample all over our prime minister again.
Poilievre would go on to claim the Trudeau Liberals have been caught off guard by Trump's latest announcement.
The threats that we heard last night should have come as no surprise. Yet, for some reason, they did surprise the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister. It was only 20 days ago that the Finance Minister said, Canada will be fine. Nothing to worry about. Well, they should have seen this coming a mile away. President Trump had been saying that he would do this. He was elected 3 weeks ago. You'd think the Prime Minister would have been furiously planning, preparing, meeting with the premiers and talking about a counter plan during that time. And now we learn that since the threat happened, he's come up with exactly one response: a Zoom call.
Prime Minister Trudeau didn't participate in this emergency debate. Making the government's case that they're on top of this file was the Minister of Finance, Chrystia Freeland. Now, she said Canada needs the United States, but also said the United States needs us.
Canada is the largest export market for the United States in the world, larger than China, Japan, the United Kingdom, and France combined. It is also the case that the things we sell to the United States are the things they really need. We sell them oil. We sell them electricity. We sell them critical minerals and metals. Canada is essential to the United States' domestic energy supply. Last year, 60% of U.S. crude oil imports originated in Canada.
On Trump's demands that Canada and Mexico do more to secure their borders and tackle the international drug trade and illegal immigration, Freeland again claimed border security is a top priority for the government.
Let me be clear, both to Canadians and to our American neighbors. Law enforcement agencies from our two countries, the RCMP, the Canadian Border Services Agency, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection work together every single day to disrupt the scourge of fentanyl coming from China and other countries. In addition, the CBSA is continuously strengthening its ability to detect opioids through enhanced inspections at ports of entry, detector dogs, and emerging technologies. Canada and Canadians have the right and the need to have total control over who enters our country.
So the Prime Minister was a no-show for the debate. So was the NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh. Mr. Singh's top priority right now is expanding the scope of the Liberals' Christmas giveaway, the 2-month break on the GST, and $250 checks for 18 million Canadians earning up to $150,000 a year. Not enough, according to Mr. Singh. He wants those cash handouts expanded to include seniors and students and people with disabilities. Mr. Singh says he's willing to help the Liberals pass the GST holiday, but he is not on board with the $250 check plan until the Liberals, quote, fix the checks.
When they briefed us, they said 150 and less. They did not specify working Canadians. We assumed, obviously, someone's earning no income, they should absolutely be able to get supported.
So are you saying then that you are not going to help pass any sort of motion for this one-day pause or end the impasse until the government changes the draft legislation, or you've already committed to supporting it? What's happening now?
No, what we're saying is the GST holiday should move ahead. That's something that Canadians need. They need a break this winter. We've been talking about that for a while. We need to give Canadians a break. Let's give a tax cut for the working class. Let's make that happen right away. And the Liberals need to fix the checks.
On that point, Mr. Singh would appear to have the support of another opposition leader, the Bloc Québécois leader, Yves-François Blanchet. He had long been fighting for an increase to old age security payments.
The federal government seems to have made a decision which will apply to its jurisdiction. I do not see it getting into provinces' affairs, refunding money or whatever like that at this point. My problem with this is that the people who need the most this money are not the people who will receive access to this money. This is the problem I have. Whatever else that would touch Ontario or Alberta will be the business of Ontario or Alberta.
We do expect to hear more about this from Mr. Singh. He is supposed to speak with the press gallery in about 90 minutes from now. Mr. Trudeau is expected to attend question period today. And then there is a First Minister's meeting later today. The Prime Minister will meet with all the premiers about the tariff threat. That meeting is supposed to start at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
The threat of tariffs on Canadian exports to the United States is the biggest political story in the country right now, no question, but it's far from the only political news story. Another big one is the deepening divide between the Alberta government, led by Premier Danielle Smith, and the Trudeau Liberals in Ottawa. This is a relationship that is colder than Cold Lake in January. Premier Smith is putting the hammer down, insisting there is no way that Liberals in Ottawa will ever impose an emissions cap on Alberta's oil and gas industry.
We've been trying to negotiate with them now ever since the moment I had my first conversation with Justin Trudeau, where I told him that we wanted to align with their objectives to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. And we've had multiple letters, multiple meetings. We've had tables of deputy ministers together, and it's all been for naught. And so we're now at a point where we have to take action. So the structure of the Sovereignty Act is we put a motion towards the legislature to get an agreement in principle to develop the legislative framework to do these things. So some of them can be done through policy, some can be done through regulation. Some of them will have to bring legislation back into legislature in the spring. But we want the legislature to fully know our intentions and all of the ways in which we're going to defend our constitutional rights to develop our resources.
So what does all of this mean? What is Alberta going to do? Well, there will be an immediate constitutional challenge to this emissions cap. But Premier Smith seeks to go much, much further. Her government wants to make sure that no Alberta entity ever participates in enforcing such a cap. Alberta's oil and gas facilities and infrastructure would be legally defined and protected as essential infrastructure. Federal officials would be banned from entering any oil and gas facilities in the province. And all data about greenhouse gas emissions would be deemed to be the proprietary information of the government of Alberta. Premier Smith is claiming the Trudeau Liberals have no interest in negotiating an emissions cap, that the fix has been in from the start.
The emissions cap has been in place pretty much in this design from the moment that, even before I became Premier and before Minister Schultz became Environment Minister, Whitney Isaac was writing letters to Guilbeault to say the approach that you're proposing will not work. And so this has been out there floating around for a couple of years. We've been advocating and working with them to see if we could find some way of finding some common ground. All of that advocacy has not resulted in any change of direction whatsoever. And so we are now in the phase of regulation where they're consulting on the first round. They're not responding to any of our suggestions and pleas not to do this. And so we know that we've got to take these kinds of actions, because if they continue down this path, it will become law, very likely in the spring. And we want to be ready for all of the measures that we're going to take when that comes down.
Trudeau's two pitchmen in Ottawa on the emissions cap are Stephen Guilbeault, the environment minister, and Jonathan Wilkinson. He's the natural resources minister. He disputes the claim from Premier Smith that an emissions cap would mean lower levels of oil production for Alberta, and he mocked Pierre Poilievre's support of Danielle Smith in this fight against Ottawa.
We need to work with the Americans on oil and gas and ensure that we're actually continuing to export to the United States. That's important for the Americans. It's important for Canada. That's true of hydroelectricity. It's true of critical minerals. It's true of potash. But here in Canada, we actually need to ensure a robust industry that also does its part to reduce carbon emissions. No sector gets a pass. Do it in a thoughtful way. And if Mr. Poilievre took the time to look at the emissions cap, he would actually see that we expect production to increase significantly over the next number of years.
Minister Wilkinson says no sector gets a pass, but there is no emissions cap on any other sector of the economy. It's only for oil and gas. Now, far away from Alberta, there was a provincial election settled yesterday. In Nova Scotia, it went blue again in a big, big way. The Nova Scotia PC party, led by Premier Tim Houston, captured its second majority government, a majority government even bigger than the first, 42 seats. During his victory speech, Tim Houston recalled some moments from the hustings.
This victory is for each and every one of you. It's as much for the gentleman in Yarmouth who said, "I'm voting for you," when he opened the door. He said, "I'm voting for you because that extra $100 a month that I get under your government means the world to me. That's a big difference in my life," he said. "So I'm voting for you because of that." He actually tracked me down a bit later in the pouring rain. He came chasing after me in the pouring rain with his phone. And he said, "My sister's on the phone. She doesn't believe I actually spoke to the Premier. Will you talk to her?" This victory is for him and his sister and their whole family. And it's as much for them as it is for the gentleman in a building in Bedford who opened up the door, took one look at me and said, "Go away." NDP, he said. We had a little chat. When I left that apartment building, because it's still Nova Scotia, and because we're all still blue nosers, when I left that building a half hour later, he and his wife were standing in the lobby. And I wouldn't say she had him by the ear, but let me say I accepted his apology. It
was a terrible night for the Nova Scotia Liberals. The leader of the Nova Scotia Liberals, Zach Churchill, lost his own riding. The Liberals managed to win just 3 seats. The Nova Scotia New Democrats will form the official opposition. Claudia Chender will be the leader of the official opposition.
And while we had hoped for a different result tonight, make no mistake, our vision for a different kind of government has struck a nerve. And I am here to tell you that the Nova Scotia NDP is on the rise.
Even before election night, there were already all kinds of rumors about the future of the Nova Scotia Liberal Party. One of the rumors is that there could be a leadership run for the Liberal Party. Former Trudeau cabinet minister Scott Bryson, who was first elected as an MP way back when as a progressive conservative and then crossed the floor to the Liberals, he announced in 2018 that he was leaving federal politics ahead of the 2019 federal election. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now You Know with Rob Snow
Returns on News Radio.
Here alongside David Smith on a Wednesday. By the way, if you're ever looking for a podcast of this show, Now You Know with Rob Snow, great new mobile app for you to try. And hear our show, listen to the podcast when you want to at your leisure. It's called the Seeker app. That is Seeker, spelled Seekr. All kinds of exclusive audio that you won't hear anywhere else. news, music, sports. You can download Seeker for iOS or Android. That is Seeker, spelled Seekr. And now you know with Rob Snow's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. David, I have great news for you, by the way.
Oh, you do?
I won the lottery.
You won the lottery?
I won the lottery. So 80 million. There was 80 million up for grabs in the Lotto Max.
And how much of that did you get?
I bought $12 worth of tickets.
Mm-hmm.
I bought two $5 tickets and a couple of extra plays or whatever it is, and I won $20.
$20.
Yeah, I'm up $8. I'm up $8.
Holy.
Okay. Yeah. So that's pretty good. Yeah, won $20. Won $20. Awesome. But nobody won the big jackpot last night.
So what does that mean?
That means that they do the Lotto Max twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays.
Right.
So that means the Lotto Max on Friday is $100 million. That'll be the jackpot.
Okay, but what are your odds of winning twice in 1 week? That's got to be mathematically impossible, no?
Yeah, I don't know what the odds are for me, but the odds of winning, say, $100 million on Friday night are 1 in 33,294,800.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So that old line, Dave. So you're saying there's a chance, right? So last night there were 14 $1 million prizes, individual $1 million prizes, which I'm sure you'd be satisfied with. You don't need the whole 80 million, Dave.
I'm a pretty bohemian guy. I could get by with $1 million.
You can get by on $1 million bucks, right?
No problem.
You can, find a place to golf for the rest of your life with $1 million bucks in the bank.
That'd be
okay.
sad. Yeah.
So there were 14 of those up for grabs last night. At least 3 of them have been won. So there will be 20 Maximilian prizes worth $1 million each on Friday. And the jackpot will be, as I said, $100 million. Now, last night, somebody did win the second place prize, which you can imagine with an $80 million jackpot probably be a pretty big prize, be about $500,000 or so. And as it turns out, you can imagine you match 6 of the 7 numbers, including the bonus number. Oh my gosh, I won. I must have won something big, only to turn out you have to split it with 3 other people. So you got to split second place, right?
That's how they get
so
you.
Someone in Kelowna, British Columbia, 2 people from Ontario, 1 person from Quebec, not me, are taking home the second prize, the consolation prize. And it's still pretty good. $99,588, Dave.
Oh, it's nothing to sneeze at.
And 30 cents.
Better than a kick in the pants. Yeah, that'll do.
$99,588. So very good. Very good. Congratulations to all the winners, including me and my fresh, crisp $20 bill.
Are you going to reinvest it now in more tickets, or?
Well, I'm gonna, the $20. I'll buy $20 worth for Friday. I'm playing with house money at this point.
Oh yeah,
Blake,
you're way out ahead. That's good.
Okay, the Newsday panel. We have a lot to talk about with our panelists right after the news. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio. The Newsday panel.
And the gang's all here for today's Newsday panel. Along with me, it's Chris Sims, Alberta Director, Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Chris has also been a journalist, worked as a staffer on Parliament Hill, calls Lethbridge, Alberta home these days. How are you?
Awesome, Snowman. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Looks like winter's in full swing in Lethbridge.
Oh, it's so cold and there's snow everywhere.
Cold and snowy and everything else.
Yeah, I bundle my children up and I put a flashing bike light on them to send them to the bus in the morning.
There you go. Okay. Joining us for the very first time on the Newsday panel, really looking forward to it, Nick McRoberts, Vice President Winston Wilmot in Ottawa, where I'm told he is the resident Atlantic Canadian. How are you?
I'm good, Rob. Even better to be known as the resident Atlantic Canadian. Warms my heart.
Well, Well, we're certainly gonna want to talk about the Nova Scotia election. I mean, I don't think the outcome was ever really in doubt, but very convincing win for Tim Houston, the Progressive Conservatives. But before we get to that, let's talk about the biggest political story in the country right now: the threat of tariffs by the Trump administration. So there's an interesting narrative. It's outlined today, and I admit I was thinking about this, and lo and behold, here's a Don Braid column in the Calgary Herald today about this very thing, that this threat from Trump could breathe some new life into Trudeau's political fortunes and the fortunes of the struggling Liberal Party. It could present kind of what I would call a rally around the flag opportunity for the government and for Mr. Trudeau. Yes, no, laughing out loud. I would really like to know your opinion on this idea. Nick, why don't you go first, Nick?
Sure. Yeah. I think on the rally around the flag part, yes, this is going to be a high-profile debate, conversation, piece of news that will get more attention to the average Canadian than I think other stories will. And, naturally, the party and the government will try to position Trudeau as, that's the captain of that team. I think, unfortunately, what I also think, and I don't necessarily agree with, is that this will be some kind of be a positive shift for the Prime Minister. I think the reason he's unpopular is deeply personal. It's not a policy issue for people as much as it may have stemmed from that. And, if we avoid tariffs, that's great. I hope we do. They'd be horrible for our economy. I can't imagine a position where that shifts voters' opinions who are sitting here going, I've just had enough of this guy. I do think it will come to a deal, but you have the majority of Canadians thinking that or a large majority of decided Canadians thinking that Pierre Poilievre is better suited to deal with Trump. And so, I think the dissuaded voter might be looking at it and going, okay, get this done and then get out of the way. We're ready for new leadership.
Right. Okay. Even if this crisis is averted, we now return you to your regularly scheduled crisis. That Mr. Trudeau has been wearing, has been carrying a lot of the baggage for, the cost of living and housing and groceries and carbon taxes and the opioid crisis, all of this other stuff. What do you think, Chris?
I don't think it'll move the needle on Trudeau's popularity. I think that ship has sailed. I do think that it will kind of rally people around the idea of Team Canada. He just doesn't get to be the captain of the team. So I thought that was indicative based on Mr. Poilievre's comments yesterday when he said, I only care about Canada, very bluntly, and said we have to fix this. And I think this will ultimately force Canada's hand to do the things that incoming President-elect Trump wants done, of fixing the border. And most people who are concerned about affordability, who are concerned about really high taxes, the fact that their kids can't find a decent place to live, the fact that we're seeing more and more people in the grips of this homelessness and addiction crisis, and it really is. I don't know any family that is not affected by this. If those are the issues that Trump has with our border, I don't see a lot of everyday Canadians going, hey, screw him. How dare he get upset about these issues? I think a lot of Canadians are upset about those issues too. So I think economically, these tariffs would be awful for us, really bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can't overstate that. So I think this will force Canada's hand, and they will make a deal. Keep in mind, this is classic Trump. Anybody who reads Art of the Deal knows that he'll come in heavy, and you'll work out a deal. I think they're going to work out a deal.
Okay, so there's going to be a First Minister's meeting in about 4.5 hours from now. Mr. Trudeau doesn't really like to hold these kinds of things. I will say Mr. Harper did not either. He preferred to deal with the premiers one-on-one, straight bilateral agreements, whatever the case might be. I mean, if you're Mr. Trudeau, what do you say to the premiers? What's your message to premiers like Doug Ford or like Danielle Smith in Alberta or Francois Legault in Quebec? Nick, what do you say to these premiers?
it's got to be that rallying call, right? It's got to be that Team Canada approach. It's got to be that we're putting partisanship at the door. We're working out a deal here, and we're going to work together for the benefits of Canadians. And I think that the Prime Minister has a heightened level of responsibility to these premiers in an environment where some of them, you mentioned Atlantic Canada, Premiers Holt and King feel as if they're being unconsulted or gone over. And so, that's going to be a tense room to be in. These premiers have very, very serious economic concerns, for their own provinces. And I think that they'll be coming into this with skepticism and a look towards the Prime Minister of let's put this aside and get a deal done here. And now's the time that you listen to us. I would be curious to be in that room and to see how much talking the Prime Minister's actually doing versus the premiers. I would wager they're probably lining up with their speaking points to him.
Yeah, I mean, it comes one day after, a very heated news conference in Alberta, and Premier Smith, really fighting back on something like the emissions cap. Does she want to be on? I mean, she knows what's at stake with energy exports to the United States, but does she want to be on Team Canada if Justin Trudeau's the captain of Team Canada? I guess that would be one of the things I would wonder, Chris.
No, Trudeau better be wearing asbestos underwear when Premier Smith walks into that room, for sure. She came out swinging, and rightly so, defending Alberta's energy sector yesterday. For folks who don't know, it's essentially a production cap. They're trying to say that you need to reduce your emissions by 35%, aka your production by 35%, which would cripple the Alberta economy, and it would really, really damage the Canadian economy. We are still the number one supplier of oil and gas to places like the United States of America. And as Polyev pointed out yesterday, our trade relationship with them can't be overstated. We trade more with the United States than every other country in the world combined. So I don't think that Premier Smith is going to sit back and hope that the geniuses in Ottawa are capable of leading Team Canada if we see, and I imagine Scott Moe feels the same way, although I haven't heard directly from him, if we see that they're fumbling the ball again, don't be surprised if you see especially Western Canadian premiers stepping forward and saying, listen, we'll just deal with you mano a mano, we'll go down to D.C. ourselves and we'll work out a deal.
Okay, when we come back, the vibe session. Christopher Freeland calling Canadian struggles with the current economic environment a vibe session. It's the Newsday panel. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Our Newsday panel, Chris Sims, the Alberta Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, is with us, alongside Nick McRoberts, Vice President of Winston Wilmot in Ottawa today. Chris in Lethbridge, Alberta. The vibe session. So let's listen to a little bit of the Minister of Finance, Christopher Freeland, describing Canadian struggle in the current economic environment, describing it as a vibe session. David, go ahead.
There is a disconnect between the real economic, the really positive economic news, the fact that the Canadian economy does appear set for a soft landing. That's good news. But Canadians aren't feeling it, and that is shaping their economic behavior in ways that are not great for the Canadian economy. People have been talking about a vibe session and how that is a challenge for the Canadian economy.
Okay, vibe session. So when I heard the Minister of Finance describe the Canadian economy that way as a vibe session, I thought, wow, that popping noise I just heard was Chris Sims' head exploding. Your thoughts, please, Chris Sims from the Taxpayers Federation.
It's so embarrassing. It's really embarrassing. This is not some, gal pal of mine. We're sitting around having a box of wine, and she says something silly like that. She's the finance minister of a G7 country, talking like this. And it just really shows, is it any wonder this government has doubled the debt? That they cannot balance the budget to save their lives. It's not a mystery because we have the finance minister saying things like, it's a vibe session. And we had, remember, just a few months ago, we had the prime minister. I can't even remember the words, Rob. It was something like, we're in the middle of a she-covery after a she-session. And before that, he said the budget would balance itself after we grew the economy from the heart outwards. Like, it just gives you a migraine.
You're like a greatest hits. You're like a greatest hits album. Right. Okay. Maybe not the best choice of words. Lacking empathy. No. What I heard yesterday, lacking empathy. I heard this from the callers. Lacking empathy. Tone deaf. Comes across as tone deaf.
Amateur. Junior high.
Okay.
I would say even it is even an emotional thing. This is a numbers thing. Rob, you and I have covered tons of budgets together.
Yeah.
This is about math and numbers and balancing the budget and lowering taxes and keeping spending in check. This isn't about vibes. Can we pay our taxes in vibes?
Okay. Nick, what do you think about just throwing out a word like that? It's a vibe session. There's a disconnect.
It's to be frank, it's insulting.
Insulting? Okay.
You know, it's I've been talking about the Liberals needing to bring fresh messaging to some of their economic policy, but I didn't mean like this. You know, this is the same.
No, not like that. Yeah.
Okay. No, like it's you know, what is canceling my Disney Plus subscription part of, you know, a good vibe? Like it just, and then the tone around like insinuating that it's Canadians' fault that we're in this. I just, it's embarrassing, as you said, Chris. Like it's, you know, it's so tone deaf, and it's just, it leads me into that kind of like, okay, you guys have lost the plot. I'm stopping listening. When's the new government coming in? And like, quite frankly, I'm saying that as a former, you know, Liberal staffer. Like I know these messages. This is not it.
If I can, Rob, quickly, for my friend Nick, who's a former Liberal staffer, it wasn't always like this. The CTF gave Paul Martin the Tax Fighter Award for balancing the budget. John Manley was good with money. It has not always been this way.
Right. Okay. Look, our time is tight. I did want to talk about the $250 payments and stuff, but I'm going to bring that up with the callers, and I have a lot of my own opinions on that stuff anyway. So when we come back, I really want to talk about this big re-election victory for the PC party. Gosh, it's tough to not only be a federal Liberal these days, but a lot of the provincial Liberal parties are in trouble. The Liberal vote just, I mean, it collapsed last night. The leader lost his own riding. I do wonder if there's a warning sign in there in these provincial election results for Liberal MPs in Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia's been pretty kind to Liberals in the past. Lots to talk about there when we come back on our Newsday panel. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
Chris Sims is the Alberta Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation with us, along with Nick McRoberts, Vice President Winston Wilmot in Ottawa, where he is the resident Atlantic Canadian. So what are your thoughts on the PC party's big re-election victory in the Nova Scotia campaign, Nick? What do you think?
Yeah, you know, it's I think a blowout is an appropriate word.
Blowout, yeah.
You know, it's the outcome that I think everyone expected in terms of a PC majority government, and Houston, you know, using every lever that he had to trigger this and gain a bigger majority. What I'm looking at is the opposition and the third party, right? You have the Liberals moving into the third party and basically being decimated, and you have the NDP, you know, forming the opposition there. You know, I think you saw Houston court some of that rural suburban centrist coalition that Premier McNeil did, and that definitely helped them. I think the PCs picked up about 8 suburban rural Lib seats. But I think the biggest part here, Rob, and I think what your listeners are going to be looking at is the kind of you know, this Liberal defeat within a continuing national context of provincial Liberals on the decline. What I will point out is that you still have Premier Fury in Newfoundland polling well, and you have Premier Holt having just been elected. So the brand of a provincial Liberal is not dead, especially in Atlantic Canada. However, the brand of a provincial Liberal associated with the federal Liberal, I think, is becoming much, much more dangerous and untenable.
I also found it interesting, Chris. I mean, it pays for these provincial premiers to use Justin Trudeau as a foil. Certainly, Premier Houston ran against a carbon tax. I don't think it helped the Nova Scotia Liberals that they tried to say, well, we'll get rid of the carbon tax and replace it with cap and trade, whatever. Like that didn't help them. Some quick thoughts on what happened in Nova Scotia, please.
Yeah, we think that messaging kind of blew up in their faces of the provincial Liberals. I think this is an obvious rejection of the carbon tax, period, no matter what they call it. Fascinating, Rob, is that, remember, it's largely in Nova Scotia where home furnace oil is used, and they've gotten an exemption on the carbon tax for that.
That's right.
So Nova Scotians aren't buying it. They're not taking that bait, and they rejected the carbon tax anyway. So really fascinating to see how this plays out and shows on the national stage.
Should Liberal MPs in Nova Scotia be even more worried now, Nick? What do you think?
Yes, hard stop.
Yes?
I think they were already scared, and I think this is just going to embolden people that wanted to run for the Conservatives in Nova Scotia. I think they're going to get strong candidates. I wouldn't be surprised if there were familiar names among those running. And I think that all Atlantic Canadian MPs, I think, are really feeling this. And I talked a couple weeks ago with Atlantic Liberals during that caucus coup, and that is the product of this, of them looking at it and going, I'm going to lose my job not because of what I'm doing, but because of what my boss is or isn't doing. And that's a real concern for the party.
All right. Great to hear from both of you today. There's a lot happening. Thank you so much for your insight. Really appreciate it.
Happy Wednesday.
Stay warm, Chris.
Thanks, Rob.
Bye-bye. Yeah, Nick McRoberts from Winston-Wilmot. He's in Ottawa today. Chris Sims is the Alberta Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation out in Lethbridge, Alberta. I'm Rob Snow. The Talkback is coming up. We're going to talk a lot about those $250 checks that 18 million Canadians will get sometime next year. Who should be getting those checks, those $250 checks? Should anyone get them? This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. And today's topic, the GST holiday and the $250 checks. And we're really going to focus more on the $250 checks than the 2-month GST holiday that's being pitched right now by the Trudeau Liberals in Ottawa. So here's a question for you today, everyone, at 1-833-668-2577. Who should get those $250 checks from the government next year? Who should get those $250 checks? Who should get the checks? Should it be as designed? Should the government send those checks to more than 18 million Canadians as long as they worked last year and made no more than $150,000? $150,000. Are you okay with that? Because that's the Trudeau government's plan right now. As long as you worked last year and made up to $150,000, you will get a $250 check. You okay with that? Or should it be expanded? Should it include people who didn't work or couldn't work last year? Should these checks go to people, for example, on social assistance, or people who rely on government disability payments, or pensioners who didn't work last year? In other words, should more people be eligible to collect these checks, the $250 checks from the government? That's what the NDP is pitching. That the current criteria is too narrow, and it should be expanded to include more Canadians. Now, that, of course, would make this giveaway a lot more expensive. The Bloc Québécois is also on side with part of that because it has been calling on the government for many months to increase old age security payments. So it wants seniors, for example, to collect these checks. What do you think if that happened? Really love to know. Or here's another option, of course. Should the whole plan be scrapped? Should the whole plan be scrapped? People who are saying that say scrap it because it's shameless politics, first of all. It's the Trudeau Liberals bribing people with their own money. It's all borrowed money. The government is running a huge deficit by any measure. And we're just saddling future generations with even more debt. And in addition to that argument, others are saying it's money that could be better spent elsewhere and just pick your priority. Is your priority social housing and homelessness, or more support for veterans, or more drug treatment programs, or more money for nurses or doctors or mental health care, or beefing up the military? I mean, after all, look, this as advertised, the GST holiday and the checks, in excess of $6 billion. And some say it's money that could be better spent elsewhere or not spent at all. I would really like to know where you stand on this issue with less than a month to go before Christmas, with the Liberals struggling the polls, with Canadians struggling to make ends meet. There is ample evidence of that. A lot of Canadians are having difficulties making ends meet these days. Cost of living is the issue. I don't think too many people would argue that a lot of Canadians could use a break. At the last 2 years, with inflation and higher interest rates and higher shelter costs, higher food costs, higher gas prices, property taxes, insurance premiums, utility bills, tough times for a lot of people. And this is the latest thing that the Liberals have come up with: a 2-month break from the GST on a long list of items. I would say some make sense, some make no sense at all. And then next year, sometime in the spring, a check. For 18 million Canadians, one time only, $250. The Liberals say, this is our plan, we want to stick to it. And it's there to help you out and tide you over because we're in a vibe session. The economy's not that bad, you know, it's your vibe. The New Democrats say, we're all for the GST break, but you got to fix the checks. You're not sending the checks to the people who need it the most, people who didn't work in 2023 or couldn't work in 2023. What about the people on social assistance or EI, or relying on a disability stipend, or a student who was studying and not working? Send checks to those people too. And the Bloc says send it to seniors. And the Conservatives are saying, don't fall for this. Axe the tax. Fix the budget. And you're going to get these checks. And then a few weeks later, the carbon tax is going up 18%. It's a bait and switch. You're going to get $250. They're going to jack up the carbon tax again. Most economists are saying this is not great economic policy. If anything, it is a temporary sugar high for the economy, all with borrowed money. Look, there are two big issues preoccupying your political leaders in Ottawa right now. The big one is Trump and the threat of tariffs. We talked a lot about that yesterday. This is the other one. This affordability package on offer from the Liberals. And most of the debate centers on the $250 checks and who should get them, if anyone should get them at all. I want to talk about these checks. You might get one even if you don't really need one. And someone who really needs one might not get one. Who should get the checks? 1-833-668-2577. That's our call-in line if you've never called before. Just mention that to our call screener. We'll make your call a priority. 1-833-668-2577. Who should get the checks? Your calls next on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Who should get the $250 checks that the Trudeau Liberals plan to send out to Canadians next year? Should it be as designed? 18 million Canadians, as long as they worked last year and earned no more than $150,000 in that year. Should more people qualify for those checks? Pensioners, students, people on social assistance, people who didn't work last year, in addition to all the other people who would qualify? Or should the whole plan be scrapped because it's all borrowed money, it's too expensive, and there are better ways to spend that kind of money? What's your opinion on the $250? Who should get the checks? 1-833-668-2577. Mike in Halifax. Hello, Mike.
How are you today, sir?
I'm good, Mike. Who should get the checks?
Nobody.
Nobody
should, because it's only encouraging him that he's doing something right. It's absolutely stupid. $250, that might fill a Ford F-150. You already know my situation, and the old age pensions. That's the funny thing about it is he wants to give people money that's making 100, 150. Well, I'm living on what turns out to be 13 or 1,600 a month now. So, what needs to happen is the people that need money need to receive a permanent amount of money, whether it's biweekly or monthly or whatever, to survive. Like, it's not, these little one-time payments are, it's something you go out, you fill your tank and buy one bag of groceries and it's gone. It's not beneficial
for
really
example,
to anybody.
Mike, you being a pensioner, the Democrats and the Bloc, to their credit, are saying, pensioners should get this if they didn't work. Despite the fact that they didn't work, they should still qualify for this. But you're saying even if you got the $250, that it's not going to go very far, and you think there needs to be more substantive help, I guess you would say. Right?
Yeah,
for people
you know what?
Okay,
like I said, the thing is that it's if $200 or $500 fell in my hand today, nice. I can find some stuff to do with it. Help me out a little bit, but it's for a week, 3-4 days.
Okay.
People need something that's more permanent in this country, the ones that are really hurting.
All right. Thanks, Mike, for the call to Ayr, Ontario. Dave in Ayr, Ontario. Go ahead, Dave. Who should get the checks, Dave?
Hey, Rob. The $250 is like putting on a Band-Aid onto a major flesh wound. It's nothing. It's a one-time thing. And, you really wish that the people would see through all of this. It's candy-coated, and it will do nothing. Just to sit there and say either the GST rebate, the 2 months, hey, take the GST off the gasoline then. That's what everyone needs or requires in life to, let alone for the farmers, the transporting, everything.
Okay.
That gasoline is the big one. And yes, it would go against his carbon tax and everything else like this. So they can't do it.
Okay.
They haven't thought this out.
Haven't thought it out. Okay.
How do we please them? And
right. So the economists are saying like it would be a sugar high for the economy. You're almost making it sound like Mr. Trudeau wants to give Canadians a sugar high, kind of a sugar high.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
He's so far down in the polls, he can't even see the light of day. But they're not there. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Is that they're trying to stay on power. They're so low in the polls. Just either step down, call the election, get it over with.
Do you think you're going to qualify for one of these checks? If you don't mind me asking.
I am retired.
Last year? Okay,
but I do work, and I do, so I would probably
so you might get one. Yeah, you might get one then. Okay, all right, Dave, thank you. To some lines available there, folks. 1-833-668-2577. Paul is in Cambridge. Thanks for calling, Paul. Go ahead, Paul. Who should get the checks, Paul?
You know who's going to get the checks? No one.
No one.
No one's getting these checks.
Well,
because the only way to do this is to go through Parliament. Okay, you can't just arbitrarily say, "Oh, we're going to give out these checks." it has to go through Parliament. And what's going on in Parliament right now? Parliament is at a standstill because the Liberals refuse to turn over the documents that they've been ordered to turn over. So they put out this thing, this GST holiday, this $250. They know that they cannot get it through Parliament. They cannot get it passed.
I've been listening to the opposition House leader from the New Democrats, and he thinks they've found a kind of a parliamentary maneuver around this where they're going to suspend the whole privilege thing having to do with the green slush fund for at least one day. They want to pass at least the GST break. They're not on board with the checks just yet, and then they'll get back to the standstill in Parliament.
Yeah, so what they're doing is they're looking for a loophole, and the Liberals don't want a loophole because what they want is to be able to say, listen, we tried to give you a GST holiday, we tried to give you these $250 checks, and the Conservative government has been blocking it because we won't release the documents that we've been ordered to release, so this is all the Conservatives' fault. It's not our fault. That's all it is. It's a scam. They cannot do it. They know they can't do it. To suggest that there may be a loophole is just wishful thinking. It is not going to happen because the Conservatives are going to block it, and it's all their fault that we don't get our $250 check, which, by the way, I won't get anyways. And also the GST holiday. I haven't bought a car seat for a kid in a long, long time. I don't buy a whole lot of candy. So I'm not going to benefit from this so-called GST holiday.
Well, what about
either.
beer and wine? Do you buy beer and wine?
Pardon me?
Beer and wine?
Beer on occasion. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm more of a liquor man myself.
More of a liquor man. Okay. Well,
it's
not on
I
spirits.
just bought my big bottle the other day. That's going to last me a little while. So I'm not holding my breath on any HS or GST rebate, and you won't see a check. But the Liberals.
Okay, you don't think it's going to come to pass anyway. All right, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, they're heavily promoting it. I'd love to know what kind of negotiations are happening behind the scenes right now between Liberals and New Democrats, because I think both of them would love to get $250 checks into people's bank accounts. Who should get the checks? $250 headed to a bank account with your name on it. Maybe. 1-833-668-2577. Share your thoughts, please. It's News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Who should get the checks, the $250 checks that the Trudeau Liberals plan to send out next year as designed to the 18 million Canadians as long as they worked last year, earned up to $150,000? Should more people qualify? Pensioners, people on social assistance, people who didn't work last year. That's what the NDP is demanding. Should the whole thing be scrapped? It's borrowed money. It's too expensive. Better ways to spend that kind of money. It's $6 billion. What's your opinion on the checks, please? Joe in Nova Scotia. Who should get the checks, Joe? Who should get the checks?
Hey, Rob. How you doing?
Hey, good, Joe. Thanks.
Good. I'm glad you're a CFL fan.
Oh, yes.
Listened to you during, the time leading up to the Grey Cup and after, so it was, yeah. Anyway, listen, JT has got to take a walk. He has got to quit. He is looking out for himself, and he is looking out not for Canadians. I guarantee you, you ask any Canadian, do you want $250 or do you want to not have a $6 billion deficit put on your budget? He's looking out for himself, and every Canadian, I would say most, are going, listen to your previous callers. I agree with them all.
Really?
Yeah.
A lot of people could use $250. A lot of people could use $250, you know?
Yeah.
Joe?
A lot of people could use 500. A lot, this is a ripple in the pond. I mean, it's not
okay.
But $6 billion is there's a lot of ways he could fix stuff, and he's not doing it. And we're getting the crumbs of the bread on the ground where the big loaf is eaten. And Like, JT has got to go. We need some good leadership in this country. I mean, Poilievre, for what he is, like, I don't want to get too political, but JT is so horrible that he's going to win.
Okay. All right. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Scrap
Anyway,
it, he says.
man,
Yep.
there's $6 billion. Wow.
6.3. Yeah, 6.3.
Yeah, and he knows he's going to be gone, so he has no problem spending it. He's got to quit. And
Okay. All right. I'm going to take one more call before the news. Joe, I thank you. Thank you. And go Red Blacks. Russ in High River. Hi, Russ. Who should get the checks, Russ?
What was that football team? I missed it. What did you say? Red Blacks?
I said go Red Blacks. Yeah, go Red Blacks.
Anyway, to answer your question about the Bucks, you know what? Nobody should get it. It shouldn't even be done.
Really?
Do something to help Canadians. Cancel the carbon tax and the clean fuel tax. And don't worry about the $250. They'll get the money back. Leave the money in the hands of the people and quit taking it. You know, that's what it is. This just shows you how out of touch the Liberals are in Ottawa, in their bubble. This is not, you come out to average person and ask the average person sitting in a coffee shop, I don't know about Eastern Canada, but Western Canada, they don't care about the $250. They're worried about everything else. And as for that GST, that's a joke. Come on. That's only 5% of what the people buy. That you think that's going to make a difference when you buy groceries? You buy $100 worth of groceries, that's 5%. That doesn't make any difference to anybody.
Well, yeah. Plus, most the GST is not on most grocery items already. So there you go. All right, thank you. In Russ and High River, good to hear from you. Go to Dartmouth and Calgary when we come back after the latest breaking news on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Who should get the checks, the $250 checks the Trudeau government is planning to dole out next year? I have to say, ever since this was first announced, lots of things bouncing around in my head. Some would say there's lots of room up there. For the last year or so that we've been doing this show, by far the cost of living has been the top issue. Whenever we talk about things related to the cost of living, interest rates, housing, groceries, mortgage payments, trying to make ends meet, paying the rent, always get a lot of calls on a topic like that because so many people are having such a hard time right now. Ample evidence of that. There's a news story about that just about every day. There's a story in the news today, people taking on more and more debt, falling further behind on payments. Equifax, 1.3 million Canadians missed a credit payment in the third quarter, up 10% in a year. Total consumer credit debt up 4% in a quarter. Average credit card balances more than $3,300. Non-bank loans for cars up 12%. On and on it goes like that. Non-bank loans. Pockets of stress is what some people are called there. We're seeing pockets of stress. So along comes the government, an unpopular government, yes, slow to recognize the pockets of stress, and it says it's here to help. It's here to help. Mr. Trudeau's here to help. Mr. Guilbeault's here to help. Chrystia Freeland, here to help. 2-month break on the GST, and sometime next year, $250 check. If you worked last year and earned no more than $150,000, you get a check for $250, and I assume if you're married, your spouse is in the same situation, your spouse will get a check for $250. You have an older child at home and they worked, they meet these requirements, your child could get a $250 check. But your neighbor across the street, the old lady who's retired, gets by on the CPP and the OAS, maybe the GIS, doesn't get a check because she didn't work. And a few blocks down the road, someone on a monthly disability statement from the government can't work. They don't get a $250 check because they didn't work. It's only for workers. They're calling it the Working Canadians rebate. It's for workers. And if you didn't work, you don't get the rebate. It's really as easy as that. But should it be like that? Should it really work that way? 1-833-668-2577. Ben is a first-time caller in Calgary. Thanks for calling, Ben. Who should get the check?
Hey, Rob. Thanks for taking my call. No, I think these checks and the tax holidays completely ridiculous and just goes to show how bad of a state Canada is in a whole. I think it's going to be, as a previous gentleman said, it's going to be something, proposed solution that is denied by the Conservatives is going to be the agenda the Liberals are pushing. And I don't think I think this is something that is totally unrealistic and is just to get votes at the end of the day. I really can't see a situation in the near or far future where government giving out money for free is ever going to work. As said, economists are completely unenthused by this. And I just think it's a short-term proposed solution in order to garner votes and gain some support for an already failing Liberal party.
All right. So when I say who should get the check, you're saying nobody.
Absolutely. I think we need big policy change. Coming from Alberta specifically, energy being our biggest industry, I really do think that if we weren't in such a chokehold, maybe we'd be able to, and we already contribute quite a bit to the economy across the nation, never mind just Calgary. I think we should be encouraging energy and encouraging industry to be able to flourish, obviously in a sustainable manner, but in a way that doesn't expedite their process of leaving the country in order to favor better economies. So, I just think it's a huge issue that needs to be solved, and I think nobody should get the checks. It's just totally outrageous and not even in the question at the end of the day.
Gotcha. All right, Ben. Thank you. Okay, that's a few callers who have said they're just kind of setting it up so that it doesn't pass, and then you're going to blame the Conservatives. Oh, we wanted to help you. We wanted to help you, but those mean and nasty Conservatives. We wanted to give you a $250 check, and the Conservatives instead of giving everybody a lump of coal. Tim in Dartmouth, you're on the air. Tim, go ahead. Who should get the checks? Who should get the check?
No one. If they're concerned about, first of all, anyone with a half. Anyways, someone with a half a brain knows it's a pride. Anyways, if you're really concerned about it, make the personal exemption $24,000, both provincially and federally. So first $24,000 a person earns is theirs. That would stimulate the economy. People should be able to survive on it.
So a big income tax cut, then, right? Yeah.
And
Lower
if they
taxes for everybody.
And if they want to up after 24,000 instead of 12% or whatever, they want it up to 13. Doesn't matter. The first 24,000 is the important stuff for the basics.
Okay. All right. Interesting points there, Tim. Thank you for calling. Nobody should get the checks. Nobody should get the checks. Popular opinion today. I'm surprised people aren't saying, well, I'm a pensioner, I didn't work, and you're giving it to somebody who worked and they're making $140,000 and they're getting a check and I'm not getting a check. I'm surprised that I'm not hearing more about that. Adam in Halifax. Adam, you're on the air. Who should get the checks, Adam? What do you think?
I don't think anybody should get the check. I think it's a terrible idea. I find it kind of a condescending, let's give them this $250 and that'll shut them up kind of thing. That doesn't surprise me at all from Trudeau. I just don't like the tone behind it, to be honest with you. I think the whole thing just doesn't feel right. I don't like it. It's typical of what he does. I just find it very condescending, and I agree with most people that.
Right.
Much
They're trying to pay you off, and you can't be bought for $250.
No, it's not going to change anything. But here, I got a question. So, if I get $250, do I have to claim that on my taxes next year as income?
I'll get David to look into that, whether it's taxable income or not, or whether it's tax free. I'm not sure.
It's not. It's tax free. It's tax free.
It's tax free, David. Yeah. Okay, good stuff. There you go. Tax free.
Okay, I was going to say. All right. Well, that would have made it all even worse. But no, I think there's a lot better things we can do with $6 million. But also, if I just did a quick math thing there, Robin. So you're saying it costs $6 billion divided by 250. That comes to 24 million people. I can't see 24 million people in the country making $150,000.
No, it's the GST holidays. I think $1.4 billion, and then the balance is the
combined
checks.
Programs. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no worries. That makes sense. Okay. All right, yeah, no, it just doesn't. It's condescending. I don't like it.
Condescending. All right, gotcha. All right, thank you. 1-833-668-2577. Busy start to Talkback today as we debate who should get the checks. A lot of people don't even like the idea of the $250 checks. What about you? Couldn't you use $250? Mr. Trudeau really wants to give you $250. And if you're not getting $250, but somebody else is, Mr. Singh says you should be getting that $250 too. 1-833-668-2577. This is Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Who should get the checks? The $250 checks that Trudeau Liberals plan to send to Canadians next year. Should it be as designed? As designed means 18 million Canadians as long as they worked last year and earned no more than $150,000. Should more people qualify? Say pensioners, for example, who didn't work last year, in addition to all the other people who qualify, or should the whole plan be scrapped? Too expensive. What's your opinion? Who should get the checks? Rick in Cambridge, what do you think, Rick? Who should get the checks, Rick?
Rob, I'm kind of more insulted from the government to sit there and throw breadcrumbs out in front of us. All Canadians deserve much better than this. I would, first of all, start with $2,500 a person, not $250. $250, what does that get you? Like one trip to the grocery store pretty much these days? Like, as Canadians and as a rich country, to me, this is more of an insult than anything, that we should be managed better than this and have more wealth in our country. But $250, first of all, I think it should be for everybody, and I think it should be $2,500.
Okay, so instead of it costing, say, 4-point-something billion just for the checks, you'd be happy if it cost, what, $40 billion to send everybody a check?
Whatever it takes to get all Canadians back on their feet and the help they need, definitely.
Okay, so your big issue is that the check's not big enough. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's partly that it's not big enough, but in hindsight, we are a rich country. Why do we need these checks in general?
Okay.
So if we're at this point that we need these checks, and $250 is really nothing these days, I have to say honestly, because I know my bills are way more than that, and it's not feasible. It doesn't make sense to me. If you want to hand out money to people and Canadians and stuff like that, today's date, you need to go in the thousands. And first of all, it always comes back to us also that we're going to be paying the taxes on that. So, for me, it's more that why are we in this situation anyways that we're doing this, handing out money, when as a rich country as Canada, that we're in this situation right now.
Gotcha. In Cambridge. Rick, thank you. From Cambridge, Ontario to Edmonton. Virginia's in Edmonton. Hello, Virginia.
Yes, good morning. How are you?
I'm good, Virginia. Who should get the checks?
What do I think about the check? Well, it would be lovely if we could all everybody could have it, but the way the situation is here, I'm very blunt and straight to the point, so I'm going to tell you, and you might not like what I have to say, but this is all part of a plan. It's like reeling in a fish, throw out tidbits and they reel them in, and quite frankly, this has all been premeditated, in my opinion. It's all been premeditated from 9 years ago, and our country is on the verge of collapse, and we may be a rich country, but we have been cornered into a position here where all our money's been given away to foreign entities, et cetera, and so on. And now Mr. Trump, if he gets in, wants to put in a 25% tax on our borders, which I don't disagree with him, because maybe that'll tighten up the noose up here that things have to straighten out, because if you don't comply, then you don't get. And USA is our ally, and we can't do anything to be pissing them off, to be blunt. And if you want to play turkey, well, you better be playing nice in the sandbox. And so far, Trudeau doesn't want to play nice in the sandbox, and he's deliberately done what he's done because
we're a little off the topic. I don't want. We talked about tariffs yesterday for 2 hours, so we can talk about tariffs, another day. That issue is not. I want to know about the checks. The way the checks are designed right now. There's a big argument in Ottawa that people who really need the money are not getting the money. Well, people who really don't need the money are going to get the money. So that's why I think the question needs to be asked, who should get the checks? Let's move along, take one more here. Kyle and Listowel. Thanks for calling, Kyle. Who should get these checks?
Well, if it was $251, Trudeau might get my vote, but not for $250. I mean, let's be serious now. Like, no, but seriously, I don't want a check. Nobody needs a check. Take that money that billions of dollars, divide that by how many provinces and territories we have, give that money to them, give that money to the people for our hospitals, and especially, why don't you use that money and give it to our military people? How about that? How about give it to where we need it? I understand that people, like you said, people that are homeless, that don't have a house, that don't have a fixed address, those are the people that are not going to get the check, right? And those are the people that deserve it the most. And at the end of the day, I think those people need the check, but everywhere else, sorry people, I know it's been a hot topic and everybody says that we don't need the checks. I agree. Spend it to where we need it, get our infrastructure back, get Canada back on its feet, make the military perfect, or not perfect, but help the military out. Let's use that money there, man. Thanks a lot, Rob.
All right, Kyle, thank you for the call. Be right back. Take a call from Mississauga. Bernie's in Mississauga. And your call as well. It's been very busy in the first hour. A couple of lines available there, though. Why don't you grab one? And join the conversation today. 1-833-668-2577. $250 of cold, hard cash in your bank account next year. If you qualify. Who should qualify? Who should get the checks? This is Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
The Trudeau Liberals plan to give 18 million Canadians $250 next year. Canadian Workers Rebate, it's being called. But there are criticisms that a lot of Canadians, because they aren't workers, are excluded from these $250 checks. So who should get the checks? Let's go to Tracy, a first-time caller in Queensland, Nova Scotia, that I had to look up on a map. Seems to be on beautiful St. Margaret's Bay there, just west of Halifax.
Country.
How are you?
It's God's country, Rob.
It looks beautiful. Looks beautiful.
Oh,
yeah.
my God. We're right across from the ocean, and the waves come over the power lines on occasion.
Oh, my goodness gracious. Wow.
Yeah, it's exciting. Rob, you know what? I've been working since I was 15 years old. I have never had $100,000 payout in my life, but I was very, very successful without a university degree. And all I'm going to say to you is I donate to the food bank. I donate to the SPCA. I donate to Souls Harbor Mission in Halifax. And to me, I would be mortified if I made $100,000 and someone sent me $250. Send it to the food bank. I think that there were, like, your radio station specified that there were 2 million people going to the food bank. What is wrong with this government?
Okay. All right. You don't like the idea that you can earn up to $149,999 and get a check for $250 from the government.
That's ridiculous to me. And in my experience in life, I'm retired now, and I'm fortunate to be able to donate, but I also respect the fact that people work hard, and I did the same, but at the end of the day, come on, $250, and I hope that a lot of people that can afford it will donate it to somewhere that needs it right now.
Okay, yeah, very, very, very popular opinion that I've heard just in my own everyday conversations. Thank you for calling, Tracy. Thanks for calling, and call back sometime. Bernie in Mississauga. Hello, Bernie.
Rob?
Yeah, hi, Bernie. Who should get the checks, Bernie?
I know
That was a nice call from that lady that just previously had. But I think everyone should get it. I think they should extend it to the pensioners and everything. I give Mr. Singh credit for trying to get this done before it goes to Parliament. So I think they should be going to everybody. Everybody, pensioners and disabled, the whole works, even people that didn't work. So
people on social assistance, people on EI, students, whatever.
Yeah.
Give
it
everybody.
To everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, give it to everybody.
Pretty expensive already, Bernie. Like I said, it's $6 billion. Start adding people. The billions start adding up, Bernie. Okay. A very quick hour. That hour flew by. But we have a whole other hour ahead right after the latest breaking news. We'll jump right back into this topic and more of your calls on Talkback. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
We've been talking about part of the affordability package outlined by the Trudeau Liberals within the last week, the GST holiday. But our focus is on the $250 checks that will go to Canadians next year. Who should get the checks? As designed, 18 million Canadians, as long as they worked last year, earned no more than $150,000. Should more people qualify for the checks? Pensioners, people on social assistance, disability, people who didn't work last year, in addition to all the people who qualify? Or should the whole thing just be scrapped? It's too expensive. It's a bribe. What's your opinion? Who should get the checks? 1-833-668-2577. Hour number 2 underway. It's Talkback. Hickey in Calgary. Thanks for calling, Hickey. Again, good to hear from you.
Hey, I think the government should put a whiteboard up on the wall and write down all the ways they're helping us and all the ways they're hurting us and try and stop hurting us. They want to just put a check mark up for helping Canadians. We go back to CERB. We go back to COVID when they handed out $30 billion to companies. It doesn't make sense. When I get my check, I'm going to take it to the food bank and donate it. We need to start helping the people that need the help, not just handing out, presents from the Trudeau government so that he thinks that we like them. 2 months later, they're going to charge us 19% more on the carbon tax. So you're going to, pass me a carrot and then you're going to knock the legs out from underneath me 2 months later. That doesn't make sense.
All right, Hickey. Thank you for the call. Good to hear from you. I mean, follow the debate, especially in this minority government situation, where the Liberals are going to need a dance partner. Their dance partner has been the NDP, of course, for the most part. The NDP has come along and said, we're good with the GST holiday. Well, we'll pass that today if you want. We get it. People need a break. This other stuff, leaving all these people behind, we're not down with that. What about all these other people who are in need? What about the disabled who can't work? What about the pensioner who didn't work? What about them? The problem is the whole package of the GST and the checks is very expensive, right? $6.3 billion. It's all debt. It's not like the Trudeau Liberals have a mattress somewhere, in Ottawa with $6.3 billion stuffed underneath. All borrowed money in a country that's $1.3 trillion in debt. The deficit, nobody knows the real number, said to be approaching $50 billion already. And this government fought the Bloc Québécois tooth and nail against increasing payments for old age security because they said that would be too expensive. We can't do that. It'd be too expensive. And a few months later, they come along. Here's $6.3 billion. GST holiday, $250 checks. But if the senior didn't work, they don't get the money. If someone who can't work because they're disabled, well, they're not going to get the money either. And the Conservatives are saying nobody should get the money. Axe the tax. To Hickey's point, they're going to jack up the carbon tax $95 a ton in April, literally just a few weeks later. And if programs like this really work, why didn't the grocery rebate solve the cost of living woes? That was just a year and a half ago, for crying out loud. That was $2.5 billion, that grocery rebate. Daniel in Calgary. Hi, Daniel. Who should get the checks, Daniel? Don't think Daniel's there. That's okay. Let's go to William. Let's try William. Hello, William.
Hello, Rob.
Yeah. Hi, William.
Hey, Rob. It's Willie from Calgary here, Alberta.
Yep.
The only thing I think that we really got to do, well, two things: get rid of Trudeau, get rid of Krista Freeland, and axe the tax.
That's what we need to do.
Okay. So nobody should get a $250 check? Is that what you're saying?
Well, maybe some people that are, under the $40,000 bracket, the poor people, the homeless, the people that are needing to go to the food banks, like the last fellow said.
Yes.
That kind of thing. But a guy that makes $150,000, he shouldn't get that. No.
Oh, okay. All right. I gotcha. Willie, thanks for calling, Willie. Good to hear from you. To Cengiz in Calgary. Cengiz, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad, sir. What I'm thinking about this rebate checks is I think the government should lower down from 150,000 to 75, because if I make 150,000, I really don't need 250, right? Or even 100,000, But I think they should reduce it to half, like 75,000, and then they add the seniors and the disability and the student to the list, because they are the ones that they really need the money, not the ones that they make 150 or 100,000. And the problem with this government is they always have only temporary things, to fix the problems. They should think of the long-term things, either economy or whatever. It should be a long-term things, not just a one-time thing or short-term or something like that. That's what we need, I think.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point. As I just pointed out, I mean, it was just a year and a half ago, Cengiz, the prime minister and the finance minister, they were in a grocery rebate. They were doing the grocery rebate. I don't know if you remember that. Do you remember the grocery rebate? Everybody's going to get a grocery rebate, help you pay for your groceries.
Yes,
it was $2.5 billion, one time only. Yeah. And here they are a year and a half later, $250. What's it going to be next? $275?
As I said, Rob, these are all just the temporary ones, the short-term
temporary,
ones.
Yeah.
In this government, we need somebody to think of the long-term, like say 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road, like fix it, for extended period of time, not just a one time or just a few months or anything like that, because it's not going to solve anything. And it's going to make taxpayers pay more money, because we're going to be owing more money, to government. And it's like a one step forward and two step back. That sounds to me it's like this.
All right. Great points all around. Thank you. Not much to disagree with there. Thank you. Okay. I'll be right back. We'll stop here. It's Talkback, hour number 2. Who should get the checks? $250 checks. The plan is to deliver them to 18 million bank accounts March, April of next year, when you start getting your refunds from the government after income tax time. 1-833-668-2577. Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Who should get the $250 checks the Trudeau Liberals plan to send out to Canadians next year? Every Canadian who worked last year earned up to $150,000. Should it be expanded, include pensioners, people on social assistance, or just scrap the plan altogether? It's a vote bribe. Roger in Calgary is a first-time caller. Roger, welcome to the party. Thank you for calling, sir. Go ahead.
Hi there. Just 3 quick points. I feel that that $250 should not be given out. Why not reduce our taxes on what we take home by 5 or 7% and decide how we want to spend that money? And then lastly, before we start helping other countries and giving out so much money, why not have some type of legislation that says we have balanced books first, then we go out and help others. But we need to have a balanced book in our own house first.
Okay, like a balanced budget law. Those have been passed from time to time in various countries. Provincial governments have tried to pass those before, a balanced budget law.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah.
Use that balanced budget, take care of our own house first, and then move on, and then no to the $250. It's going to cost us more to pay that back in the end.
Sure. Okay. What about the people who are struggling to make ends meet? But millions of people are struggling to make ends meet. What do you do to help those people?
Yeah, you do need those programs in place, and by helping those people that can save 5 to 7% in their income or in their programs, an increase in their programs, that would be more beneficial long term. But just a $250 Band-Aid is not a solution.
Gotcha. Thank you, Roger, for the call. It's a very popular opinion today. Gord in Kitchener. Hello, Gord. Share your thoughts, Gord. Who should get the checks, Gord?
Well, why did we take the carbon tax in the first place? Wasn't it to more or less punish high carbon emitters and high carbon users? And shouldn't the money be, instead of just taking it as a tax grab, shouldn't it be used towards eliminating those things? And, and I understand that in taking it, some retiree in a condo in Toronto who is neither of those things really shouldn't have taken or gotten the money taken away from him. So, call that a casualty. But I'm thinking it should go towards things like incentives to change. Are you familiar with EPDs?
Okay, we're talking about the $250 rebate, the Working Canadians rebate that is coming out next spring.
Right.
As
so
an
rather than give it
affordability
back
package.
to Canadians, I think it should go towards programs in reducing carbon.
No, we're not talking about the carbon tax, sir. We're not talking about the carbon tax. We're talking about this new benefit that was announced last week by the Trudeau Liberals. We're going to do a GST holiday for 2 months, and then everybody in the new year is going to get a $250 check as long as they worked last year and earn no more than $150,000, up to $150,000. This is separate to the carbon tax. I think you've got things a little mixed up. Let's go to Tom in Kitchener. Tom. Hi, Tom.
Hello. How are we doing this afternoon?
I'm good, Tom. Thank you.
Right.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I don't believe anybody who's earning $150,000 is really in desperate need for $250. So I don't agree with that. I think you could probably, if you wanted to, bring that down to $75,000. Anybody making less than that. The ones who aren't getting are the primary caregivers who don't go to work, who have to stay at home and look after someone. And the ones on welfare. So I'm a senior. And those who owe money to Revenue Canada will not receive any of this. That'll go directly into Revenue Canada's coffers.
Right. That would go to any arrears owed to the CRA, right?
Sure. So really, you're not benefiting from any of that at all. So to some of your callers, to the point here is I would rather much see that the harmonization system tax be brought down by federally and provincially down by 4 points on both sides. Bring it down more. I'd rather have someone say, when you're talking about bringing home more money, if you're going to tax people, tax them on their 40 hours of work. Don't tax them on their overtime. Because that's the reason why people are working overtime is to make extra money. In the thought process of thinking they're going to bring more money home when actually don't, because then you go into a different tax bracket and you lose on your taxes.
Right. I believe Polyev is starting to outline a policy about taxes on overtime, but I'd have to look a little bit more into it.
Well, yeah, I'm saying, but as I know, as an hourly employee, and even when I was an hourly employee, and even a salary employee, as soon as I jumped over to a different tax bracket, I was taxed more. I was bringing home less. So let's say in an average week, I worked 90 hours. Well, here I'm looking at my gross wage. Well, I'm thinking that's pretty good. And also, when I see the taxes come off it, well, now I'm only bringing home 20% of of the overtime that I worked. More,
right.
I've lost that.
Yeah.
And with regards to everything else, and I think this is what really sort of bothers me. I have not heard any of the politicians, federally or provincially, talk about how we as Canadians or anybody else live far above our means. And when we get into trouble, all of a sudden because of inflation or because of a pandemic and that, we're all screaming now because the cost of living went up when we could barely afford it we had before. So if we're going to start talking about things, let's talk about what we should be talking. I agree that we should have our community chest, but we should come first. Foreign aid, but I guess we're sort of bound to the foreign aid policies of giving out to other countries. But then again, you can attach certain things before you hand the money out to these countries who are violating human rights acts and
sure.
That is my 2 cents for today.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you, Tom. Good stuff. More of your calls. Just had very busy. One line available there. It's yours. 1-833-668-2577. $250. Who knew that $250 would prompt so much discussion? And yet here it has. Right here on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Who should get these $250 checks that the Trudeau government is planning to dole out next year? Dennis in Alberta. Hello, Dennis.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, Dennis. What do you think? What's your opinion here, Dennis?
No.
No. Nobody?
Nobody. Your question was who should get it? Nobody. End the conversation. Have a great day. Thanks for taking my call.
All right, Dennis. That's a long wait for that. Okay, let's go to Mel is in Red Deer. Mel. Hi, Mel.
Yeah, good afternoon. I
I
kind
know.
of agree with Dennis. Nobody should get it because
why?
Like my wife and I, we could really use it because we both had non-union jobs.
Okay.
And we're living on our some of our savings and our pensions.
Right.
And we're actually living on a family house, hold the $40,000 a year. And we could really use that money, but no, we do not want that extra cost on the debt to be passed on to our grandchildren or our son's grandchildren. And that's what will happen. So we don't need it. It's vote buying. It's blatant vote buying. And as far as I'm concerned, the benefit would be, say they could allow maybe $10,000 or $15,000 more income before you're started to be taxed.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And, that just seems to make a little more sense to me. And, they don't, all these fees and stuff that are actually taxes, they keep adding on all over the place. But that's all I have to say. It's just, why should we be passing on the increase in the debt to our grandchildren and great-grandchildren? So,
all right. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your opinion. You too. To Kitchener. Donna is in Kitchener. Go ahead, Donna. Hi there, Donna. What's your opinion?
Thanks, Rob. I also agree with Mel and Dennis. I always get nervous with our governments, both federally and provincial, when they want to give out money, our money. Why? Because it becomes a fiasco. During COVID, the federal government gave out thousands of dollars, only to find out after the fact they gave away money to some who didn't qualify, or better yet, gave out way too much. I vote the federal government keeps this money and helps Canadians who are struggling with drinking water issues or assist those out west who had the forest fires. And with the trillions of money that we Canadians already owe, what difference will $250 really make?
Okay. Interesting points all around. Thank you so much for your call. I think we might even have we better stop here. If I take one more, it'd be our next caller would only have 45 seconds or a minute, and they may want to talk longer than that. So we'll take an early break here. We'll get you all up to date on the very latest breaking news, and then we'll jump right back into things after the bottom of the hour. So if you're on the line, just hang on the line. Just be a few minutes, and we'll get right back into it. I mean, the plan is 18 million Canadians, as long as they worked last year, could earn as much as $149,999. Boom, bam. Cha-ching, $250 for you. Mr. Singh is saying, hey, what about the pensioners? What about people on social assistance? What about people collecting disability? Why are they being left out? A lot of people think the whole thing should be scrap, vote buying, waste of money. $250. Who should get the checks? More of your calls after the news on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now. Hello. 1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We've been talking about these $250 checks, not very popular measure from the Trudeau government, handing out 18 million checks worth $250 apiece to people earning upwards of $150,000 a year. I guess, my issue just outside of how shameless it all is and how shallow it is, it's not very well designed. It's very poorly designed. Are people struggling? Yes. Are lots of people struggling? Yes. Could it be in the millions of people who are struggling? Yes, 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 and yes. I understand all of that. If you're going to send checks to people to help them with their struggles, send the money to those people and only those people, and we know who those people are. The government knows every single person, for example, who's on EI, or every person collecting social assistance or welfare or whatever you want to call it. The government knows every single person who's collecting a disability check every month. The government knows everyone who's collecting the old age security or the guaranteed income supplement. And the government knows who qualifies for the GST rebate already. I took a call from a woman yesterday in Kitchener on Ontario Works. What we used to call welfare in Ontario, they call it Ontario Works, social assistance. And I don't know much more about this woman other than she said she's on Ontario Works. A single individual in Ontario on welfare has to live on $733 a month. $733 a month in Southern Ontario, big city Southern Ontario. Can you even imagine it? And yet, because she's not a worker, she's not going to qualify for the Working Canadians rebate. It won't get the $250. And yet there were 65,000 Ontario teachers last year earning at least $100,000 a year. And I suspect most, if not all of them, will get a check for $250. $250 to a teacher earning six figures. And there's, this person in Kitchener on welfare, no check for her. Just, you have to get by on the $733 a month that the Ontario government sends you. Doesn't that seem like a bit of a design flaw in this program? That it fails a means? If you're going to send money to all kinds of people, shouldn't you just be sending it to people who don't have the means? Like the person on Ontario Works, instead of two teachers who might live in a nice 2,500 square foot home with two cars in the driveway and a cottage in the country, and they're working until they collect their fully indexed pension. Just something that's been, bouncing around in my head up there. Josh in Calgary, thanks for waiting, Josh. Go ahead, Josh.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Can you hear me?
Hear you just fine, sir. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think it's very, this whole thing is very contradictory to the very foundation of liberalism. Because liberalism, at their core foundation, is equality for all. And this is not equality for all because it segregates those that make more than $150,000 per year, that pay proportionately more taxes, and yet do not have access to this refund.
Okay. So what do you think should happen to this refund program? Should it be scrapped?
I think it should be scrapped because the only way is to treat everyone the same under liberal foundation is to give none of it to anybody. That's equal.
Okay, but I guess what about the idea that people who are better off should help the less fortunate? What about something like that?
The idea, it's just weird because they have no choice in the matter, but yet they pay proportionately more. Like engineers, doctors, physicians, they have no say in this, but yet they proportionally pay more. I'm all for helping people, but if they're going to, under a liberalism foundation, if you're going to be equal, make it equal, and it's just not.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you, Josh. Let's go to Robert, is in Alberta. Go ahead, Robert. You're on the air. What's your opinion on these $250 checks? And who should get them?
Hi, I don't know if you're speaking to me in Okotoks.
Yes, I am, sir. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Yeah.
You're welcome.
You know what? I think what I'm going to do if I get it, I'm just going to simply donate it to a charitable donation. I think that maybe we should all just take our checks and just donate it to United Way or some other agency that can, better distribute this money to those people that are hurting and in need. I make $100,000 a year. I don't need $250. I would just rather suggest that all the listeners just donate it to the people that are in need here.
Yeah, it's quite a popular thing. You're not the first person to mention that, Robert, and kudos on you, sir. Yeah.
I was a little bit disappointed also just thinking of, while I was waiting, how much money did we send to Ukraine to battle their fight when we got our own big fights and our own big issues that really need to be addressed. I've been gone away from Calgary for 25 years. I came back, and I was just shocked to see how it crumbled into what it is here today.
Okay, sir. Thank you. You have made your point. Thank you. Let's go to Sharif in Kitchener. Hi, Sharif. Are you there, Sharif, today?
Hello?
Sharif?
Yes, hello?
Yes, go ahead, Sharif.
Rob, how's it going?
It's fine, sir. What's your opinion on these $250 checks, Sharif? Who should get them?
Well, I think whatever you get from government, because government always raising the tax, right? Whatever you get from government, be happy. But what I would say, Justin Trudeau, remove your carbon tax. We will pay another $250, but please remove your carbon tax. Nonsense. Thank you.
Okay, Sharif. Okay. The carbon tax. Some information on the carbon tax. I'll pass it along as we make our way through the final couple of segments here on Talkback. We're moving right along here. We have 1, 2, 3 lines available. One of them could be yours at 1-833-668-2577, but we're going to stop very quickly and be right back with more of your calls as we talk about these $250 checks headed for bank accounts next year, courtesy of Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party, Government of Canada. I'm Rob Snow. Now you know it's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
A lot of calls to get to, not a lot of time to do it. So right back on the phones on the $250 checks that Mr. Trudeau wants to send out next year. Phyllis, what's your opinion, Phyllis?
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Phyllis.
I have a great idea. I think that the MPs should forego their April 1st raise, and then we can give it to everybody.
Well, I don't know if we could give it to everybody. I mean, we're talking here about a $6 billion affordability plan. I mean, MPs are making a lot of money, but however many of them, 360 of them are not going to.
I was being sarcastic,
but maybe lead by example.
Maybe we could cover $6 billion. I don't know.
Well, but maybe it would send. It's about a message that you could send. You're struggling. We understand that you're struggling. And we're not going to give ourselves a raise while so many millions of Canadians are struggling to make ends meet. I'm on you on the message that it would send.
Right.
I'm on your side
also,
there.
Booze is going up that day again, as well as the carbon tax. It just makes me laugh because they're supposed to have fiscal guardrails, and they've already blown by it by $7 billion. Those guardrails, and then we add another $6 billion on for this program. It's mind-boggling.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Phyllis, for sharing your opinion today.
Rob,
David, yes,
something that might make your day. It's going down to -20 in Calgary tonight.
Oh my goodness gracious!
So enjoy the warmth out there.
Yeah, keep it there. Keep it there.
Okay.
I had our first little snowfall up in our part of the country here, up in the wilds of the Gatineau Hills. Actually had to shovel off the step yesterday, David. But David, you were quick to point out when the Trudeau Liberals announced this affordability package of the $250 checks and the GST holiday that they're taking the GST off of beer and wine and ready-made cocktails, right?
Yes. Yeah.
While they have an escalator clause in effect on the price of beer.
Yeah. Isn't that stupid?
So the price of beer goes up automatically every year.
Yeah. Which was their idea.
It was their idea.
It was
they did it.
Trudeau government, however many years ago, who said, what would be a great idea if the tax on beer went up automatically every year, then we wouldn't have to raise it every year. It would just be automatic. Now what are they doing? Taking the tax back off of the beer. Like, come on.
Come on. Yeah. It's such a good point by you. Bruce in Calgary. Hello, Bruce. Thanks for waiting. You're on the air. What's your opinion on these checks, Bruce?
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Bruce.
I think they should not hand out the checks along with the GST temporary measure. I think this government should be stopped from introducing any new programs until they're able to demonstrate a corresponding reduction in other spending so that it doesn't end up costing us more. How many more government employees are we going to need to hire to administer the GST reduction for a temporary period and then cut more checks? We already have enough programs in place that they should be, if anything, putting more money into those funding those programs, such as disability payments, etc. At least that targets the people that really need it.
Yeah. Such a good point that you make, especially when it comes to the administration of it. Something I've been curious about. Thank you for your call, Bruce in Calgary. Just let me jump on that point. Before this announcement, there were calls in social welfare circles, anti-poverty circles, to reform the GST as it stands right now. Reform it and call it an essentials benefit. This was something that was recommended by the Affordability Action Council. Lots of smart people there. I've interviewed them a few times. And it was advocating for something called an essentials benefit. And it would work like this. Every adult in the house gets $150. Every child in the house gets $50 every month. And you make it means tested. Okay? And if you make a certain amount of money, you wouldn't qualify. And they were saying, look, the formula is already there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. The government already knows who collects the GST rebates. It's all set to go. The system is already in place. You don't have to hire a single bureaucrat. And you just use the tax data and expand the benefit, enhance the benefit, and turn the whole GST rebate system into an essentials benefit. And instead of giving people money every 3 months, give them money every month. That was the big change they recommended. Because I'll tell you what, one thing is true. If the government gives money to people who really need the money, those people will spend that money. And they're not spending it on Taylor Swift tickets. So the Affordability Council pitched this to the government. And the government said, thank you very much for your proposal. We'll take it under consideration. And instead, months go by and they come out with this. Oh, let's not do that. And let's send checks to people who instead make up to $149,999 a year and spend $6 billion doing that. Please make it make sense. Make it make sense. Who should get the checks? A couple of calls coming up next. Have to stop here. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now. Hello. 1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
In a very busy couple of hours, everyone has an opinion on these $250 checks. Let's get a couple of more. Paul is in Alberta. Paul, you're on the air, Paul. What do you think, Paul?
I think that some really good comments from many of the callers, and really let's get this money. This is absolutely absurd. And the government is just giving money. They're buying votes in anticipation in an up-and-coming election when the government's thrown out. If the money was given to the people that really need it, then the government would get no benefit from that, because those aren't the people, Rob, that are going out to vote. It's the people that are making $100,000. Those are the people that are showing up at the polls to vote. Capiche? Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Second, Rob, governments need to pay attention to what's going on in the retail industry. I'm a long-term food expert. I study food prices. And ever since the pandemic started back in 2020, inflation went up almost 18 to 20% on retail food prices. Now, although inflation's coming down and the government's bragging it's back to 2%, it's still 10 to 12% higher than it should be. Okay? And so what they really need to do is address the businesses that have taken advantage of the pandemic and are still ripping off the general public. And that applies to food, gas, you name it, Rob. It's happening everywhere, including Costco. These companies are showing record profits, and they're making billions of dollars. And why doesn't the government just do their job? And if they have to put price controls back in place, bring inflation down, and make the world more affordable in Canada to live in, then they wouldn't have to play with this GST stuff, right?
All right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not in favor of the government setting prices at the grocery store. I'm not a big fan of that, but I appreciate your opinion. Let's go to Rob in Kitchener. Hi there, Rob. Hello, Rob. Yeah, you're on the air, sir. Go ahead, Rob. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that they're handing out $250 checks. Like, if you're going to do that, do it for everybody. But that on the set, like, is the country in the black? Right?
No.
So then why are you handing out free money to just spend it on nothing?
Okay.
Like, yes, I understand $250.
Well, why do you think they're doing it, Rob?
Well, I mean, $250, they're saying, oh, it'll help the people. Well, $250 isn't going to do nothing. One-time check, absolutely nothing. It's going to help you out for, 10 minutes?
Okay. Well, I hope it would last a little longer than 10 minutes, but I get your point. It's a very popular opinion today.
Exactly.
$250 doesn't go as far as it used to, right? Like maybe a week's worth of groceries? Depending on the vehicle you drive, maybe a tank or two of gas, something like that, right?
Exactly it. Yes, it'll help, but I
Yes.
mean, if you want to make long-term help, that's not the way to do it.
Okay. Good opinion.
Yep, that's
Thank
all
you.
I got to say.
Yeah. You have said it. Thank you. A lot of people mention the carbon tax. I just wanted to mention what's happening with the carbon tax, because this is going to be a big talking point from the Conservatives as this debate rages on. Okay. And I interviewed Poilievre last week, and this is what he said. Instead of this, axe the tax. And I'm not going to repeat his talking points. You've heard them all 1,000 times before. But people are going to get this $250, and then just a few weeks later, the carbon tax is going up. It's $80 a ton now. In the spring, April 1st, is going up to $95 a ton. So that's an increase in 1 year of 18.7%. And when that carbon tax hits $95 a ton, it will have increased 46% in 2 years, from $65 to $95 a ton. Now, the Liberals are going to say, but the rebates are going up too, and they are. And I looked it up. The rebates for people in Alberta are going to go up 20%. The rebates in Ontario are going to go up 18%. And the carbon tax rebates for people in Nova Scotia are going to also increase 20%. So the carbon tax is going up, but so are the rebates. And the government's going to swear you're better off because of the rebates. And the Canadians are going to say there's no way you're better off. And the Conservatives are going to say there's no way you're better off. But that's going to be the line from the Conservatives. You're going to get your $250 check, and then, bam, carbon tax increase coming your way. Busy Talkback hour. Thank you for all of your calls. A brand new topic and more of your calls tomorrow on Talkback. The latest breaking news is next on News Radio.